Imagine walking through life carrying a quiet, invisible compass, one that always points you toward inner peace. This compass is Stoicism. But even the strongest compass falters when surrounded by interference. And nothing interferes with our direction more than the people we let into our lives. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This quote is popular, often repeated, and, when viewed through a Stoic lens, deeply revealing. Because who we allow into our mental space directly affects who we become. The Stoics knew this long before it became a motivational slogan. Epictetus advised that we should keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Simple advice, but difficult in practice. Because life isn't lived in a monastery. We work with people, we live with family, we encounter strangers and longtime friends, some who uplift, and others who quietly erode us. This part of the journey is about identifying those hidden weights. The first step in protecting your tranquility is knowing where the leaks are. Let's begin with the first intruder of peace, the complainer. You've likely encountered this person. Maybe you even share a coffee break with them every day. They find flaws in everything, the weather, their boss, their lunch. Nothing is ever good enough. At first, it seems harmless. A little venting, perhaps. But over time, their complaints become a soundtrack, looping in your head. Their dissatisfaction becomes ambient noise in your daily life. And slowly, without realizing, you find your own mindset darkening. Stoicism teaches us not to be indifferent, but to guard our mental space. Because attention is energy. And complaints are like slow leaks in the tank of your spirit. When a complainer dominates a conversation, Stoicism offers you options, not escape, but control. If possible, limit exposure. That's the obvious answer. But life isn't always that simple. Sometimes, the complainer is a coworker or a sibling or someone you genuinely care about. In those moments, create an internal boundary. Let their complaints pass through you like wine through open fingers. You do not have to receive what is being offered. You can acknowledge without absorbing. Better yet, you can gently guide the conversation toward solutions. Not with judgment, but with subtle redirection. A simple question, what do you think could help fix that? Can break the rhythm of passive negativity. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength, applied softly but consistently, reshapes even the most draining exchanges. Now imagine a different kind of challenge. Not someone who complains, but someone who brings chaos like a storm, the drama magnet. At first, they're exhilarating. Magnetic. They live loud, full of stories and scandal. You might feel drawn to their energy, mistaking noise for passion, turbulence for depth. But over time, their chaos becomes contagious. They fight with friends. Fall in and out of conflict. Every week is a new crisis. And inevitably, they pull you in. Not maliciously, but unconsciously. You become part of the script. You offer advice, only to be ignored. You mediate arguments, only to find yourself now in one. Slowly, your life begins revolving around their turbulence. The Stoic ship, once steady, now finds itself in swirling waters. So how do we sail through this storm? First, through emotional distance. Stoics never advocated for coldness, they advocated for clarity. You can listen without entangling. One useful technique is reflective listening. Instead of reacting or advising, simply echo what they say. So you feel betrayed. You're upset about what she said. This approach signals empathy, but denies the drama a place to grow inside you. Second, become selectively unavailable. Set boundaries on your availability, not as punishment, but as protection. A Stoic values time like a monk values silence. When you preserve your mental space, you cultivate presence. True happiness, Seneca reminds us, is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. That includes the future drama others may bring. And then there is a more subtle opponent, the naysayer. They don't yell or complain. They whisper doubt. You're excited about a new goal. You've done your research, felt the spark, and made a plan. You share it, and they say, "Are you sure that'll work?" Or worse, most people fail at that. Their voice doesn't sound like an enemy, it sounds like reason. But reason without hope is cynicism dressed in rationality. These aren't mentors, they're anchors. Now here's the Stoic twist: don't fight them. Engage them, on your terms. Ask them for advice. When you shift their role from critic to contributor, you neutralize the venom. Their ego no longer feeds on contradiction. It adjusts to contribution. Another option: flip the doubt. If they say, "Most people fail at that," ask, "What do you think someone would need to succeed?" It's disarming. It forces constructive thought. It also signals that your vision is not up for passive commentary, but for thoughtful engagement. As Epictetus said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But Stoics don't just listen, they filter. Not all input deserves entry into your internal domain. You are the gatekeeper of what thoughts you let dwell. But perhaps the most difficult kind of person is the one who doesn't attack your dreams, they attack responsibility itself, the victim. This person lives life as though fate has singled them out for punishment. Nothing is their fault. Everything is unfair. There's always someone, or something, to blame. At first, they seem vulnerable. They draw you in with stories of injustice. And being compassionate, you listen. You want to help. But you start to notice a pattern. Advice goes nowhere. Encouragement is met with resistance. Their problems never evolve, they repeat. And slowly, your energy is pulled into a loop that never breaks. The Stoic response here is not cruelty, it's compassionate detachment. Empathy, without enmeshment. You offer your presence, but not your peace. You listen, but do not become the fixer. You maintain your inner posture even as theirs crumbles. The best revenge, Marcus Aurelius wrote, is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. In this case, the best response to someone who refuses to take responsibility is to embody it fully. Live your own life with ownership, with clarity. Let your actions be the counterargument. Let your example be the only advice they can't ignore. In all these interactions, from the complainer to the victim, the Stoic isn't seeking control. He is seeking sovereignty. Not over others, but over himself. And this is where part 1 closes, with the understanding that the people around us are either sharpening our virtue or dulling it. The Stoic's job isn't to judge them, but to remain unshaken by them. The strength is not in isolation, but in internal insulation. To be among storms, and still remain sky. But what happens when the disruption isn't loud or obvious? When it's disguised as joy, smiles, and glittering optimism? Enter the next figure on our path, the toxic positivist. On the surface, they seem harmless, uplifting, even. They're the ones who always tell you to stay positive, to just smile, to focus on the good. Their words sparkle like sunlight on the surface of a deep ocean. But beneath that gloss is a subtle pressure to invalidate your real emotions. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotionless endurance. But in truth, Stoicism teaches us to acknowledge emotions fully, to investigate them, not suppress them. The toxic positivist does the opposite, they replace discomfort with denial. Imagine going through a breakup. You're hurt, confused, and raw. You confide in someone, and they say, "At least you're free now. Just be happy, it's not worth being sad over." In their world, sadness is weakness, and any negativity is failure. But Stoicism teaches us that emotions are not the enemy, our relationship to them is. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to understand our duties, and to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. That includes understanding our duty to grieve when grieving is right. To feel sorrow, disappointment, or frustration is not a failure, it's a human necessity. Denying it is a kind of violence against our inner truth. So how do we respond to the toxic glow of forced positivity? With balance. Acknowledge the bright and the dark. When someone says, "At least you have your health," you can respond, "I'm deeply grateful for that, but I'm also hurting right now, and that deserves space too." Emotional granularity, the ability to name and feel a wide range of emotions, is key. I feel exhausted, but also hopeful. I'm sad, but I trust this will pass. These layered truths allow us to live honestly and fully. The Stoic doesn't ignore pain, he respects it. Because pain, when understood, becomes wisdom. Now let's move from the smiling denier to someone more shadowy, the manipulator. Think of your life as a script. You are the protagonist, the one with agency and direction. But the manipulator is a hidden editor, someone who rewrites your story, line by line, without your consent. They don't shout. They insinuate. They play the victim when it suits them. Or flatter you into decisions that serve them, not you. The worst part? You often don't realize it until the damage is done. Take, for example, a friend who constantly gets you to pay for dinner. You've been doing so well financially, this would mean the world to me. Or a coworker who pushes their tasks onto your plate under the guise of helplessness. You're just better at this than I am. Over time, you become the helper, the provider, the fixer, and they remain comfortably passive. But in reality, they're directing your script to meet their needs. And every yes you give to them becomes a quiet no to your own priorities. The Stoic answer is subtle resistance, not through confrontation, but through clarity. One method is called fogging. You agree with any part of their statement that is true, without giving in to their emotional leverage. Yes, I've been doing well. That's why I'm budgeting carefully now, so I'll split the bill. You validate without surrendering. You remain calm, composed, and firm. Stoicism trains you to respond, not react. You can also set firm boundaries, not as a wall, but as a framework for honest interaction. I can't lend money, but I'm happy to support you in other ways. This isn't rejection, it's self-respect. And as Epictetus reminded us, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. The manipulator thrives on predictable reactions, guilt, fear, obligation. But when you meet manipulation with equanimity, you reclaim authorship of your own script. You write the story, and your boundaries become the punctuation. But there's one more character in this gallery of distraction, one that doesn't speak in guilt or drama, but in minutes and hours quietly stolen, the time vampire. They might seem harmless. A coworker who pops in with endless small talk. A friend who invites you to every trivial gathering. A relative who needs just 5 minutes that turn into an hour. These people don't drain your energy emotionally, they devour your time. And time, as the Stoics constantly remind us, is our most precious resource. Seneca wrote, "Life, if well lived, is long enough." But the key lies in that phrase, well lived. The time vampire ensures it isn't. They chop your day into pieces, until your deepest pursuits are lost beneath 1,000 interruptions. How do you resist someone who simply asks for your time? With structure. Use techniques like the Pomodoro method, work for 25 minutes, rest for 5, and during those intervals, let it be known, you are not to be disturbed. Block out hours where your time belongs only to you. Not to emails. Not to idle chatter. To your craft, your growth, your clarity. If a friend invites you out repeatedly, and it doesn't align with your values or goals, learn to say no, without guilt. I appreciate the invite, but I can't make it. You don't owe explanations for preserving your focus. Stoicism is not about isolation. It's about intentional presence. You decide where your attention goes. You curate your hours like a sacred gallery. Because ultimately, every minute you spend is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. The complainers, the manipulators, the naysayers, they are all potential distortions of your art. But the biggest distortion? Letting others define your rhythm. Stoicism invites us to conduct our lives like a symphony, measured, intentional, and aligned with our highest principles. As we reach the close of Part 2, we see that the people we interact with are not neutral. Every conversation is an exchange of energy, of attention, of values. The Stoic does not isolate himself to avoid pain. He remains in the world, but chooses how to remain. He engages without entanglement. He listens without absorption. And most importantly, he holds firm to the understanding that he alone is responsible for his peace. That peace is not something granted. It is guarded. Not with walls, but with wisdom. So far, we've seen how the Stoic navigates the storm of external personalities, the complainer, the manipulator, the drama magnet, those whose presence tugs at our equilibrium. But now comes the most profound challenge of all. What if the true threat to your peace isn't outside of you, but inside? What if, unknowingly, you have become one of the very people you're trying to avoid? This is where Stoicism turns its lens inward. It does not simply offer us a list of behaviors to sidestep, it invites us to examine the self. It whispers a quieter, harder question: are you playing any of these roles in someone else's life? Think back to the complainer. The one who fixates on what's broken instead of building what could be. It's easy to spot that person across the room. But harder to notice the pattern in ourselves, when we talk about the job we hate, the people who disappoint us, the dreams that never happened. Complaining doesn't always come in angry tones. It's in sighs. In sarcasm. In small, passive retreats from effort. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, shift from commentary to action. From dissatisfaction to direction. Or perhaps you've been the naysayer, masked under the guise of realism. Have you discouraged someone's ambition with a well-timed dose of doubt? Have you ever said, "Are you sure that's going to work?" or "That seems risky," when what the person really needed was not your caution, but your belief? Sometimes, fear speaks not from love, but from habit. We worry because we imagine protection. But Stoicism reminds us, do not let your fears guide someone else's courage. If you've played the doubter, there is still time to become the uplifter. And maybe, without realizing, you've dipped into the role of the victim. You felt like life was happening to you instead of through you. You blamed the system, your upbringing, the luck you never had. And while some of those complaints may be justified, Stoicism demands a pivot, from blame to bravery. Epictetus, born a slave, could have lived in that narrative forever. But he didn't. He declared instead, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That reaction, that choice, is where your power begins. If you've made excuses, let this be your moment to rewrite the script. To reclaim authorship. No one else is responsible for your next move. Self-reflection, in Stoicism, is not an exercise in guilt. It's a form of strength training. To sit with discomfort, to investigate it, to say, yes, I've done this. And now I will do better. That is where virtue is born. And yet, in all this introspection, the Stoic never loses his footing in the world. He still walks among others. He still chooses relationships, conversations, and communities. Which brings us back to a simple, difficult truth: your environment shapes your energy. In Roman times, philosophers would speak in the marketplace, not in isolation. They lived among merchants, soldiers, beggars, and politicians. The Stoics didn't retreat, they engaged. But they did so deliberately. They trained their minds like warriors trained their bodies. They chose their companions with care, because they knew, habits are contagious. Attitudes are contagious. Emotional states are contagious. Science today confirms what the Stoics intuited centuries ago: mirror neurons fire in your brain based on the emotions of people around you. You can catch someone else's stress or serenity. That's why spending time with just one anxious or angry person can leave you depleted, without even knowing why. That's why chronic exposure to negativity rewires your brain to see the world in sharper, colder tones. So when Stoicism advises you to protect your peace, it's not suggesting arrogance or detachment. It's urging you to curate your emotional ecology. To walk through the world with the same vigilance you'd use to protect a flame from the wind. Every conversation, every interaction, is either stoking your light, or snuffing it. This is why choosing the right people matters. It's not about judgment. It's about alignment. Are you surrounded by people who sharpen your reason, who inspire your discipline, who make silence feel profound instead of awkward? Or are you constantly dancing around the moods of others, translating their chaos, carrying their burdens? The Stoic way is not to abandon others, but to build stronger boundaries within yourself, to choose when to engage, how to engage, and when to simply let go. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach. This mutual elevation, this shared rising, is the heart of a meaningful relationship. Anything else is noise. And sometimes, the most courageous act is to walk away. There's a modern fear of detachment, of seeming cold or aloof. But Stoicism is not about becoming stone, it's about becoming anchored. Anchored in clarity. In values. In priorities. You're not above others. You're just choosing not to be pulled into emotional whirlpools that don't lead anywhere. You can love people without surrendering to their turbulence. You can care deeply and still choose space. And if you're worried about how it looks, how it feels to say no, to step back, remember, your peace is a non-negotiable. Your time is a non-renewable resource. Your attention is your currency. Your energy is your legacy. Spend them well. As we transition to the next part of this exploration, let's carry this truth forward: you do not owe anyone your peace. You owe it to yourself. To protect it is not selfish. It's sacred. And just as you must choose who to exclude, you must also choose who to embrace. In the next part, we will explore what Stoicism says about ideal companions, the mentors, the allies, the quiet strengths who help us rise. Because true growth doesn't just come from avoiding harm. It comes from walking with those who elevate your spirit. From forming bonds that make virtue easier. And from becoming, yourself, the kind of person worth keeping close. Now that we've seen what to avoid, the fog clears to reveal a brighter question: what kind of people should we seek? In a world full of distractions and emotional turbulence, who are the companions that lead us back to stillness, virtue, and purpose? The Stoics didn't only warn us against destructive relationships, they championed the value of wise, uplifting companionship. Epictetus emphasized this with sharp clarity: keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. This isn't poetic suggestion, it's strategic philosophy. Because life, for the Stoic, is a battle for the mind. And your allies in that battle can either sharpen your sword or dull your resolve. So who, then, are the allies of the Stoic? First, there is the mentor. This doesn't need to be someone older, wealthier, or more successful. A true Stoic mentor is someone who lives by principles, not just accomplishments. Their power is quiet, steady. You may notice them not because they command attention, but because they remain unmoved when others react. When you share problems with them, they don't fuel your fire, they clear the smoke. They ask questions that bring you inward. What's in your control? What virtue is needed here? With them, you don't leave feeling validated in weakness, you leave reminded of your strength. A good Stoic mentor teaches without lecturing. They live the lesson. Then there is the mirror friend. Not someone who simply agrees with you, but someone who reflects your truth. They are not afraid to challenge your thinking, but they do it with respect, not ego. They ask, are you acting in alignment with your values? Is this anger helping you grow? These people don't flatter, they refine. And their presence keeps your internal compass honest. Seneca described this kind of relationship when he said, a friend is another self. Not a twin, but a reflection. A presence that helps you see clearly, even when you are clouded by emotion. We also find strength in the quiet companion. This is the person who may not be overflowing with philosophical insight, but who cultivates peace around them. They don't gossip. They don't dramatize. They value presence. Perhaps it's someone who joins you in silence, on a walk, in a room, in the pause between two thoughts. Their company doesn't demand energy, it restores it. You don't need to perform around them. You simply are. And in a noisy world, that kind of presence is rare and sacred. And then there are the builders, those who are actively growing, who may not be wise yet, but are committed to the process. Their virtue is in their effort. They seek truth. They ask hard questions. They take ownership of their flaws. When you are around them, you are reminded that the work never ends. And you are inspired, not by their perfection, but by their discipline. The Stoic life is not about reaching an ideal state, it's about striving toward it, again and again. The builder walks beside you on that path. What do all these companions have in common? They reinforce your pursuit of the inner citadel, that untouchable fortress of the self, where your reason and peace reside. They are not perfect, and they don't have to be. What matters is that they point you back to your principles, not away from them. And here's the radical truth, sometimes, you must become this person for someone else. You don't need a pulpit. You don't need 1,000 followers. You just need to show up consistently with virtue. You become the calm presence in a chaotic room. The person who doesn't take offense easily. Who doesn't complain loudly. Who doesn't stir drama or dwell in grievance. Who offers honest reflection, not passive comfort. Who doesn't push people forward with force, but invites them upward with example. And sometimes, you simply become the one who listens. Not with the intent to fix, but to hold space. Stoicism is not about cold detachment, it's about deep, principled engagement. You can be someone's mirror without becoming their rescuer. You can challenge without condemning. You can model serenity without preaching it. It is in this quiet strength that your presence becomes magnetic, not flashy or loud, but undeniably grounded. And people who are ready for change will gravitate toward that energy. They'll sense your steadiness. Your refusal to be carried by every emotional tide. And even if they don't understand your philosophy, they will trust your presence. But here's a deeper layer of the Stoic journey, not everyone will follow you. Not everyone will resonate with your discipline. Some will mock your simplicity. Some will resent your stillness because it reflects their noise. That is not your burden to carry. You are not here to convert everyone. You are here to embody your path. So the question becomes, what energy are you putting into the world? When someone walks away from a conversation with you, do they feel more agitated, or more grounded? Do you leave them with more clarity or more confusion? Do you fuel their virtue, or their distraction? In a world starving for attention, the greatest gift you can offer is integrity. To be a person whose words match their actions. Whose emotions serve their values, not sabotage them. To live with such alignment that your very presence becomes a kind of permission for others to return to themselves. And yes, this takes work. Daily work. Internal work. But it's not a chore, it's a devotion. The Stoics called it the art of living. And like any art, it demands patience, failure, revision. You won't always get it right. But each day offers another brushstroke. Another moment to be clear when the world is confusing. To be kind without enabling. To be honest without cruelty. To be firm without arrogance. Because the ultimate question isn't just, who are the people around me? It's, who am I becoming around them? And even more powerfully, who becomes better because they are around me? Let us close this part with one of Seneca's most humbling insights. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. May you walk alongside those who honor that pursuit. May you offer that gift to others. And may your presence, like your philosophy, become a refuge in a restless world. As we approach the final stretch of this journey, a deeper truth begins to surface, one that transcends lists of people to avoid or emulate. Because ultimately, the Stoic path is not about them. It's about you. The world will always be full of complainers, manipulators, naysayers, and time vampires. It will also be graced by mentors, truth-tellers, and companions of peace. But none of them, not even the best, can walk your path for you. At the heart of Stoicism lies a single, liberating idea: you are responsible for the shape of your soul. Not your upbringing, not your enemies, not your circumstances. Just you. Your reactions. Your choices. Your habits. Your thoughts. Everything else is external, and thus, beyond your sovereignty. And this is where many people falter. They believe if they just cut toxic people out of their life, happiness will follow. If they find the right circle, peace will appear. But that's only half of the Stoic equation. Because no matter how carefully you curate your environment, you still bring your mind into every room you enter. So the question is no longer just, who is draining your energy? It becomes, where are you leaking your own? Do you still let minor inconveniences rattle you? Do you still chase approval from those who don't share your values? Do you hold grudges, replaying offenses like old recordings? Do you delay the inner work, waiting for a more convenient time? Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at his time, wrote in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't a morbid statement, it was a call to urgency. A reminder that every moment wasted in bitterness, distraction, or complaint is a moment stolen from your potential. From your peace. From your brief, luminous existence. So what does this mean practically? It means building your inner citadel, a fortified state of mind that no chaos can breach. It means developing habits that cultivate clarity, journaling, meditation, time in nature, silent observation. It means training your thoughts to move from judgment to reflection. From reaction to response. From blame to ownership. When someone wrongs you, the Stoic asks, what virtue can I practice in response? When you're overwhelmed, the Stoic asks, what is in my control right now? When you feel aimless, the Stoic asks, what would a wise person do in this moment? These are not just mental exercises, they are muscle memory for the soul. And they are built through repetition. Through small, daily choices to rise above impulse and return to principle. You don't need to be a philosopher to live like a Stoic. You just need to care more about your peace than your pride. That's the transformation this entire journey points toward, not a world free of difficult people, but a self free from their control. Not by dominating others, but by governing yourself. Think of this. If every person watching this video took full ownership of their mind, their reactions, their daily conduct, what kind of world would we live in? A world with fewer victims. Fewer manipulators. Fewer complainers. Because each of us would be too busy tending our own garden to poison someone else's. So, let's turn inward one last time and ask. Are you acting in alignment with your values? Are you letting petty emotions make big decisions? Are you offering others the same grace you want for yourself? Are you feeding your soul, or your ego? The Stoics were not saints. They made mistakes. They struggled. They doubted. But what made them extraordinary was their relentless return to principle. Their refusal to surrender their character to circumstance. And you can do the same. You can start today, not with grand declarations, but with a small, conscious act of virtue. A moment of restraint. A quiet refusal to gossip. A gentle redirect of your thoughts. A breath before responding. A question asked instead of a judgment made. These are the bricks of the inner citadel. These are the strokes of the masterpiece that is your life. So let us close not with advice, but with a challenge. Be the person who brings peace into every room. Be the voice of reason in the storm. Be the calm, the clarity, the grounded presence that others can rely on, even if they don't understand you. Be the one who shows, through daily practice, that Stoicism is not a relic of the past, but a way of living that still heals, still strengthens, still liberates. And in the process, you'll discover something unexpected. You'll realize that you no longer need to fear difficult people. You no longer need to fix them, avoid them, or resist them. Because your peace will no longer be up for negotiation. You've become the mountain. They are only the weather. And no matter what comes, you remain unmoved.